We remember Mahatma Gandhi's prayer for peace. Reflecting on that, let us be in an attitude of prayer. O Holy One, you who are called by 99 names by the family of humanity, we seek your guidance in our gathering. Moved by the peace prayer of Mahatma Gandhi, may we offer peace to one another as we listen, learn, and vision compassion, peace, and justice. May we see each other's beauty. May we hear the needs expressed. May we feel each other's feelings. May our shared wisdom flow from you, the highest source. May we salute that source in one another. May we be enabled to work together in unity and love for compassion, peace, and justice. May it be so. Amen.
Amen.
We recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that we are on the historic homeland of the Haudenosaunee. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Haudenosaunee people whose lands and water we benefit from today.
Amen.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome, friends and supporters of Rock Acts. I'm so glad to see each and every one of you. Some are new faces, and some have worked with Rock Acts on our initiatives over the years. Next. When I first joined the Rochester Alliance of Communities, Transforming Society, several years ago, I asked, well, just who is Rock Acts? This incorporated 501c3 organization has grown since its inception in 2014, but essentially Rock Acts has member organizations such as churches representing various denominations, the League of Women Voters, the local SEIU 1199, as well as many individuals volunteering. This membership is supported by and provided guidance from our national organization, Faith in Action. Next. Our focus, thank you. Next. Our focus is simple yet determined. We are committed to seeking and seeing the beloved community, a community where racial and social justice abound, where individual, corporate, and institutional decisions are made to help people and not hurt anyone. Next. How do we do it? A simple but challenging process of listening, organizing, educating, and agitating. Let my granddaughter tell you how Rock Acts does it. Video, the Rock Acts video.
The purpose and history of Rock Acts follows 4 important steps. Listen, organize, educate, agitate, repeat. Listening to each other, hearing different viewpoints from individuals, groups, and then listening some more on what has been said. After listening, organizing, getting together to collaborate, then educating ourselves on the issues and discussing strategy so that we can seek change through agitation. Constructively seek justice assertively, whether outside or on Zoom. Then we do it all again because change through collaboration takes time, with our personal collective interest making an impact on social justice and racism in all its manifestations. Thank you for watching this slide presentation. Social justice matters.
Thank you, Willow. This process and passion is not just local. It is national, with Faith in Action federations seeking the beloved community. Our issues and challenges are national as well as local, but we start by imaging the beloved community. After we watch the Faith in Action video, Mr. Asim Johnson, Chair of the Poverty Jobs Housing Task Force and health advocate for SEIU 1199, will lead the rest of the program as our Master of Ceremonies. We will now see the FIA video.
To be kind is not enough. It's to do justice, to engage in the places where folks are targeted, where folks are diminished, where folks are not experiencing fullness of life.
In Ferguson, I felt like we were at church during the day, like it was families and communities of people coming together, organizing, giving food to each other, finding out resources, how to help each other. That was church to me. That was my faith.
And when we found ourselves in the streets of Ferguson, we began to ask ourselves, are we in this moment like chaplains to empire that somehow help to prop up the systems that create unjust conditions for our people? Or are we prophets of the resistance who speak truth to power and who speak power to the people?
Can you imagine a future where people actually earn a decent living for the work that they perform? Can you imagine a future where we celebrate every language that is possible, speak in every way that we can make the tongue speak? Can you imagine a future like that? Can you imagine a future where the borders don't matter? What matters most is the heart. Can you imagine a future like that? Well, that's the one we're being invited to. And that's the one that they've been building for us over these last few days.
Thank you. We will now be led by Mr. Asim Johnson, who will continue with the program as our Master of Ceremonies. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Let's give a hand to our fearless leader, President Dr. Harrison, for the warm welcome. Also, a thank you to Reverend Wilkinson for the opening prayer. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Roberta Davis for the land acknowledgement. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, our work here at RockAxe is centered around changing life outcomes of residents here in Rochester. We have for years fought for the rights of people through advocacy and education, addressing poverty, housing, and jobs, the justice system, and our religious leaders caucus. However, for us to continue forward in identifying the right issues to address for the betterment of our city, we must listen and learn from one another. You're here because we believe that you are the difference between RockAxe and our allies winning or losing key battles in the future. And we want to win because we know that the stakes are so high. Your voice and experience are necessary to building the base of people activated to do the work. For everything that we do is because, through, and who we are in relationship with. And by identifying our shared self-interest, we can build power, which is the ability to control, create, and prevent change. During this next portion of our assembly, it will be interactive. You will teach as well as learn. Are we ready to get started? You could just use the reaction button at the bottom. See some thumbs up? All right, I like it. I love the energy. Next slide, please. So in preparation for our assembly, we sent a survey to residents to understand some of the issues that keep them up at night. From the responses collected, we see that poverty and climate change are two main concerns, with 72 responses for poverty and 64 responses for climate change. Education received 55 responses, the justice system 42, voting rights 41, and others 38, which we'll get into in just a second. Healthcare received 36 responses, Safe, affordable housing received 36 responses. Public safety received 29. Impact of COVID, 27. Food insecurity, 20. Jobs, 19. And childcare, 11. Now let's take a moment and look at the other section to see what topics came up. So we see truth in government. That's definitely an interesting issue there. Political gridlock, basic human rights, racial, social, economic justice, mental health care, organization accountability, gun violence, evictions, anti-racist education, dignity and dying legislation, functional financial literacy, abortion rights, right to live, broken families, workers' rights, union support. These are some very interesting topics that you will have a chance to address and give context in your breakout rooms. And I know you're probably asking yourself, okay, but Asim, what area did you get these results from? Nobody was asking that question? It's okay, I'm gonna answer for you anyway. Next slide, please. So here's a breakdown of the zip codes, the responses that we received by zip code. We show this to understand the issues aren't isolated in just one area, but rather this is a societal problem that we must tackle. So let's get started, shall we? Next slide, please. As you heard earlier, as I said earlier in this section, this will be interactive. We will support each other by listening and learning from one another's experience. Next slide, please. We'll in a few minutes break up into groups based on your priority issue. You will, in your breakout room, define and prioritize advocacy topics, share your passions, and build some community support and energy around them. And lastly, we'll do a group vote. And as we as community will define what our top priority will be. Next slide, please. So you will choose a group, a breakout room, based off of where your passion lies. With the survey topic, which will that once again focuses on whatever your area interest will be. If you don't see your topic, you can join the other room to build support and share other ideas. Within your breakout room, you will start to build the framework for action in the breakout room. Questions that we want to address are, why do we have passion for this topic? How do we share that passion and invigorate others to join our cause? And lastly, where should the focus be when addressing this topic? At the end of your breakout session, we will come back and you will report to the full group and talk about why this is such a priority to you and others within your breakout session. Each breakout room will have a facilitator and a reporter. Could I please have my facilitators and reporters raise your hand using the reaction button? Thank you. So you'll be given 30 minutes in your group to discuss the priority, why it's a priority, and what you think can be done to solve this issue. At the end of the group discussion, your group reporter will have 2 minutes to report to the entire group. After each group is gone, we will then collectively vote on which issue topic we will prioritize going forward. Are there any questions? No, no questions. So y'all ready to go ahead and get to it, right? I'm loving it. Okay, well, let's get to it. Please see the slide. Next slide, please. With the breakout rooms. Your choices are breakout room 1, poverty, breakout room 2, climate change, breakout room 3, education, breakout room 4, justice systems, and breakout room 5, which is other topics. Once again, please choose the breakout room where your passion most lies and which topic that you feel like is the biggest priority. In just a second, you'll have the option to join which room that you feel most passionate about. Once again, you'll be given 30 minutes within your breakout room. At the end of the 30 minutes, we'll come back to give an overall group report. I see your hand, Dr. Mack.
Well, we who are going to do whatever we're assigned, don't click anything yet, or do we surface other topics?
No, you'll click once the breakout rooms come up.
Okay.
All right, so you should see at the bottom, the menu bar, breakout rooms. You just click the 4 windows. We also have 3 overflow rooms in the event that we are over capacity on one particular issue. Our tech team will readjust folks into the other rooms so we can ensure that everyone is represented. And I'll be talking in about half an hour. So how did discussions go? Can I have 1 or 2 people jump off of mute? We could just popcorn it. Just briefly tell us what the how the conversation went within your group.
This is Ellie. This is Ellie. I thought we had a great conversation, and I thought that people really came up with some interesting ways to frame some of the issues of poverty. And we ran out of time, but we certainly began to even look at some of the ways that we address.
I'm sorry, Ellie, 1 second. Could everyone please go on mute?
There we go.
All
Yeah.
right, sorry about that.
That's okay. So all I was saying, I thought we had a great group. I thought it was very active. We ended up being able to summarize 7 or 8 issues and pick 3 of those, and came up with some great strategies too. So they're a great group. Kudos to the poverty group.
All right, well, we'll definitely be excited to hear their report back in just a moment. What about some others? How did the other groups go? How was group dynamics?
Education, wonderful, outstanding. That's a lively topic. A lot of good ideas, and Karen will be reporting out. No lack for silence in that group.
Okay, all right. Everybody was engaged, interactive.
Very much so, and thoughtful.
And thoughtful. That's what it's all about. We'll take one more. What about justice systems? Come on now, justice systems. Nobody wants to report back?
Well, we had Dr. Kwan and Kim and Ellen and myself and Dr. Young. In justice system, we found it to be painful and challenging. In that, as we shared what we were, as the group shared, there were some really issues that got to the heart. And we do have strategies, but it was a heartfelt discussion.
Well, those sobering moments are important because, as I said earlier, the stakes are truly high with the type of issues that we're addressing. So on that note, we can now begin our reporting. So as I mentioned earlier, each group had a reporter. The reporters will have 2 minutes. We're going to go in order of my favorite first. I'm sorry, excuse my bias, but we're going to start with poverty, then climate change, education, justice systems, and then actually the group that I had the pleasure of being a part of, the other topics, which we've got some real good stuff that we discussed in my group. So the reporter for poverty, if you could please come up and tell us why this is an issue, and what solutions your group would identify.
Okay, my name is Ralph Carter, and I had the pleasure of working with the Poverty Group. And our top 3 priorities of why this is important for Rock Acts is that wages are too low to support our families. So people are not being paid a fair wage. We need to hold employers accountable and demand fair living wages. With the loss of Kodak, Xerox, Bosch, and Lab, a number of different reasons for that. But it's basically, and without, if you have to work multiple jobs to make enough to feed the family, we're not able to provide guidance for and to provide the support as adults for our children or for our parents who may be living with us. That's number one. The second one was poverty means that we've got poor educational system that should prepare us for jobs that would pay well. But we need help finding how to access those jobs. So it's the poor educational system, and poverty means that we're faced with that. The third one we had was that poverty drives higher levels of mental health issues. So for people due to depression and anxiety, turn to drugs, and there's a cycle of self-destruction which happens. So that's why addressing poverty can really help on some of our mental health issues. So those were our top 3. We had some other ones that we came up with. Those were our top 3. And then,
thanks for that, Ralph. Yeah, if you could please talk about the solutions.
Well, some of our possible strategies was, looking at ways of improving the education about jobs and about career and so forth. So education there, driving accountability of our elected officials in terms of on those 3 areas that we mentioned, engaging community allies in the fight to address these aspects of poverty that we talked about, more pressure placed on employers to increase their wage, but then also to follow through and be accountable for promises that they make. They have to follow through. So we could do campaigns. There was a discussion in terms of an approach, different approaches we can take, door-to-door, postcard campaigns to elected officials, and publicize that, and put the heat on to those who can make these decisions to get to address the poverty issues. I did mention the accountability, driving accountability of businesses who make promises that they need to keep.
Ain't that the truth? I actually had the pleasure of representing Rock Acts at Art Mappy's Level Up Champion press conference about a month ago, highlighting some of the major employers like U of R and Strong who have committed to raising their wages. But it was also articulated from the CEO of Art Mappy that this is only the beginning. And there are so many other major employers here in our region that have to raise their wages for all to be able to have a real livable wage. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. As I said, I'm a bit biased when it comes to the Poverty Group, so I'll give y'all a shout out.
Hey, Asim, I'll mention one, and one I didn't mention. I forgot, I skipped over it. We talked about maybe looking at people like the Chamber of Commerce, others, but we need the success stories of employers who have raised wages. We need to change the narrative. There's a narrative basically that says that businesses suffer if they pay a living wage. And we need those success stories. One example regionally was Chobani Yogurt and so forth. We need those success stories of employers and lift them up who are doing the right thing and their success as a result of it.
And I love that idea. Getting the qualitative is very important. All right. Great job, Poverty Group. We can now transition to climate change.
All right. All right. Well, we would agree that poverty is such an essential issue, but we believe that climate change is really the underlying driving force and most timely issue for our times, that it's affecting everyone throughout the world with devastating weather calamities, and urban areas are suffering the most. So we need to focus on those who are most at risk. So right now, there are so many opportunities focused around this issue because there's a major economic shift happening. So there are green jobs, there are opportunities to save money and improve quality of life. So the people who need these jobs the most may not be aware that they even exist, and we could be working on part of that. So RockAct could play a significant part in the equity aspect of climate change, engaging BIPOC companies and individuals who are engaged in this work. And intersectionality, because all the issues we work on are linked into climate change, housing. So, one person brought up that zoning rules right now make it impossible to build small energy efficient houses in Monroe County. And it especially applies to elderly people. We have places of worship and empty office buildings that could be made into energy efficient, affordable housing for people. So climate change would be the underlying aspect of this environmental justice piece. Some of the ways we think we could work on this is researching and doing outreach about grants for helping low-income people make their homes more energy efficient. Just a little aside, some research organization pointed out that 75% of the emissions in our area come from housing and places of business. So in helping to make those more energy efficient. We'd like to educate faith leaders, and we have a clergy caucus in existence. So we can do education with them about the intersectionality and the specific programs so that they can educate people in their own faith communities. So we could also help identify companies doing the financing and retrofitting work so that people can easily access them, and especially highlight BIPOC companies. Partnership with other groups. There are so many groups working on this issue, but people tend to work in silos. We're a great group for connecting and bringing out the work that relates to the poverty work we're doing, but tying in the economic or the environmental justice issues that are so important right now. I think that's it.
Well, that's a lot. And what I really appreciated in your report, Ruth, is the highlighting of the intersectionalities.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you talk about specifically within Black and Brown communities around climate change, it's always an afterthought, right? But by you saying that, you can see the connectors, and at the end of the day, climate change is one of the umbrella themes for all of these issues that we're addressing tonight. By bringing that to the forefront, it should change a lot of the hearts and minds. And also, once again, I got to go back to my poverty side. I love my task force. The opportunities for these green jobs. These are new jobs that are being created. There's funding out there that people just don't know about. So that education and awareness is going to be very important. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right, let's keep it going. Education, you're up. Don't be shy.
You're mute, Karen.
Sorry, guys, in trying to share screen, I accidentally muted myself. So
I was going to just bring up our piece so we could show you what we did as opposed to just talking you through it. So let's see here if we can do that. And there we go. Then you don't have to look at my face. You can see what we were working on. You know, it's kind of a universal, or we believe it's a universal, that, you know, education is the key to the future, and our public education is floundering, and it affects every person. It's one area that affects every single person, and because every person is connected to the outcome and every person is connected to a child. So we ranked our top 3 priorities, all of which, 2 out of the 3 of which are linked to anti-racism work within the school districts. One is education of white people to better understand racism, getting engaged in anti-racism work, and helping learn how they can interrupt the cycle of racism. The second is advocating for anti-racist curriculum and anti-racist activities within the school districts for every district in the county, and to be a support for student-led advocacy in those areas. And then the third is to find a way to have shared resources across districts so all children receive a quality education, not just some children based on where they live. So all of those things were the areas that we prioritized. When we did our brainstorming, we came up with advocating for neighborhood schools to connect parents and build community, because right at the moment, we see where things are, particularly with the crisis in busing. Exploring having Rochester City School District use their existing media to really expand education, find creative ways to use that, become strong advocates at town school board meetings and being present at those school board meetings, because many people are being targeted for standing up for anti-racist work in the communities, supporting the community roundtable group, engaging more parents to help them hold the district responsible for change, supporting parents and others who are speaking out to ensure that they don't get targeted, helping students to organize themselves and identify who to send their message to, advocate strongly for real consequences for people who are harassing those who speak out or bullying. That we think that that's a really important piece. We have situations where parents are not comfortable speaking out, and connecting with our PTAs and PTOs, being good supporters and providing opportunities for parents to learn more about good anti-racist curriculum, and advocating for changing for the funding process for the Big 5 school districts.
Wow, y'all were working. All right, I love it. Phew. Well, really, what I heard, that Karen, you sounds like you got some organizers coming up, right?
Well, I think we're going to be busy.
Oh my goodness, look, I'm nervous. I might be out of a job. I hope Tracy's not on the line anymore. But in all seriousness, I really appreciated in that report the anti-racism curriculum being taught within the schools, because the cultural response currently is lacking, and there's a huge disconnect with teachers, administration, the students, and the parents. So by creating this type of approach, it's going to help to bridge that gap. And then also, I really love that you brought out the equity by supporting each other within the different districts to ensure that resources can be shared, which is, in my group, we had talked about, and you'll hear about in just a second, is also a huge concern. So thank you for that. All right, keep it moving along. Justice systems.
Hi, our group had a very rich and passionate discussion. Social justice matters. And when you're talking about something like this, it's a very challenging topic, especially given the tone right now in Rochester. So I too am going to use our sheet to help to explain some of the topics that we were able to discuss and vote as being those particular areas of focus. Excessive police cars present at mental health incidents or calls, or just excessive police cars. We discussed the fact that we saw that as a reason for our focus, the fact that too many police will show up from time to time, whether it be a demonstration or whether it's an incident. Somebody calls the police for some sort of help. Another topic that we discussed was inequity. Inequity around justice, inequity around the rules and guidelines, because they don't apply to everyone equally. There's a systemic unjust practices going on within the justice system. The bail system is weighted by influence and wealth. So we saw inequity as being one of the passionate reasons why we got together and discussed the justice system in Rochester. Some other topics where violence is present in ordinary lives. And unfortunately, more citizens have interaction with prisons and police rather than with the faith community and leaders. Some of the possible strategies that we had are more legislative advocacy. We need to get some more laws out there. We need to investigate bills and the like. Rochester Act needs to be more visible and involved with public display, protests, demonstrations. We had the discussion of training, perhaps bystander intervention training, so that when people come out, they can be more effective when they're demonstrating. There's some political balance that needs to be addressed when it comes to the Locust Club, which is a very powerful union. And also we discussed the whole idea of shootings and the idea of the tool of gun violence. And we were discussing the idea of having some sort of alternative to the go-to answer of guns. Education and research. In fact, Dr. Harrison led a very rich discussion, giving examples, giving some books that would enlighten us about the whole topic of social justice. So we saw that it's important when you're not aware of a topic, or if you need to dive a little deeper into a topic, to get some education on the topic, get some research, talk to someone who knows about what's going on, try and find some groups, try and find different resources out in the community that will help strengthen you as far as knowing what's going on with the justice system. And another topic was, do the police live in the city? Do they understand the Rochester community? Perhaps this is also a deterrent in police and community relations if they don't feel like they're part of the community. So these were some of the strategies we came up with.
Well, no, this is great, Dr. Young. Thank you for that. I really want to draw out the piece around the more legislative advocacy. I think that part is very important and actually goes back in line with what Ralph was saying with the stories. It's imperative that we start to shape our narrative, and we have the real stories of residents who are directly affected by these issues in the forefront, rather than allowing the media and our counterparts to create their own narrative. And because they have their means and their platforms that they could disseminate this information that unfortunately people start to buy into, regardless if they know that it's right or wrong, because you hear it so many times, you just start to get indoctrinated in it. So I think that piece with the legislative advocacy is going to be very important. Thank you. All right, and last but certainly not least, the other group.
Okay, let's see if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so our topics of concern, racism, definitely. One of our members, Ginny, really felt that right now it's at its highest peak. And she's really concerned that systemic racism is seen everywhere. in education and justice and housing and economics and the environmental issues. It's the underlying cause and effect. And it really concerned her that people were not making connections between these critical issues, because a whole lot goes into injustice, and it's not just one little issue by itself. We also talked about policing. I talked about it as a form of terrorism, a means of control and forcing submission, a strangling of our youth, and that our community is still not dealing with the racism that underlies the entire policing structure, and that it cuts across all the communities. Reverend Wilkinson was really worried about this gap in partnering for justice. He said that all the justice groups seem to all want to lead. They all want the microphone. And instead, what we should see is organizing neighborhoods together, that we need to be organizing in our local neighborhoods, and then the neighborhoods talking to each other and the organizations talking to each other. And he recommended that ROC needs to listen to the voices and build relationships by what's already going on and supporting that, knowing what's happening in the community, knowing who's doing it, and then supporting it. And we came back again to the issue of racism. Asim talked about how disheartening it is to see the differences in housing, transportation, education between the city and just the surrounding suburbs, and that we need to call it out explicitly, and that communities of color should have the same opportunities as everyone else. So what we choose as our major topic, racism, because it seems to underlie everything. So we talked about things like sacred conversations and relationship building. One of the things that Asim had said to us that I thought was really good was that we have to have an honest conversation. And when you have an honest conversation, then we can bring these issues to the table. We talked about how the churches used to come together and have sacred conversations. Maybe we need to go back to that. We talked about the examples, the housing segregation. We talked about a series of workshops that helped to illumine the history of the Monroe County Housing Redlining Project, where certain neighborhoods were designated for certain people and others were kept out, and the impact that has had on communities of color. We also talked about how the city has rezoned itself and favors white neighborhoods. So those neighborhoods are the ones getting the service. And the Crescent is actually being pushed in as the city is being gentrified more and more and more. We want to know why Pittsford got new books and swimming pools while we begged and pleaded for tablets and had no reliable internet for our children. Once again, we talked about what we should do about the police reallocation. We talked about if you want to work in the city, then you live in the city. So you have some stake in the outcome, that you're putting money back into the city, that you're not coming into the city and withdrawing its resources. We looked at things like residential requirements, maybe that police need more diversity training, that they need to be more experienced in life. Maybe they should go to college or trade school or something before they enter the police academy. We talked about mentoring by city leaders and advocates and activists. We talked about residents having disciplinary power. We talked about a fully funded PAB. And we want the police force, its population congruent with the population of the city itself. This, as Dr. Wilkinson said to us, this siloism, where everybody's working in their own silo, does not work. So he was envisioning our ROC Acts communities working in their local neighborhoods and their quadrants, and then starting the development of conversations between the quadrants, between the neighborhoods, regular interaction. So this becomes just a part of the culture. What we want to do is bring in the masses so that we can have mass meetings where everybody's in communication, everybody's in relationship. We're building a mass movement. So each Rock Acts community or organization would raise people's voices. We would all send representatives. We would all come to public meetings, and there would be less of these backroom meetings. So everything's transparent, everything's open, and we're all working together. Yes, we talked about that. Oh, Ginny was really concerned that it's great to have task forces, but we have to be flexible. As we saw during COVID, things happen quickly, and we as organizers and as activists have to be able to be fluid with the reality of our lives. So task forces are great, but we have to be able to move and swirl and go with the flow of life. So we need to make sure that we have both of those kind of structures at work in our organization, so we can have something that's steady like the task forces and something that's flexible and fluid and able to respond to the moment. Lastly, we talked about the poverty. We want to know why the food pantries are located in the suburbs. We want to know why they're located in favored neighborhoods, why some are open at one time and others are open at another, why it's so inconsistent. So all of these things come back to racism. That when we design a culture, we design for everyone to succeed and to be taken care of. And I think that's basically what we're saying. So racism, the underlying issue that supports the rest.
All right, and Bev said in the chat, amen to that. Thank you, Roberta. Yes, racism for all of the issues that each group has just reported back on, I would argue is the overarching problem, not just an issue, but a problem that has to be addressed. And these issues underneath are symptoms of racism. And dismantling the silos is imperative for us to address the problem of racism. But what does that look like? It looks like exactly what we're doing right now. People from various walks of life coming together with a shared self-interest and identifying real solutions. So I must say these were some very powerful solutions to addressing societal issues in our community. I want to thank you all for sharing and helping us and helping to develop a plan. Now go to the next slide.
Now.
Next slide, please.
How do I get this?
All right. So in the spirit of democracy, we will now take a vote to identify our top priority based on your reports. Please, if you would, take a moment and vote on which issue from what you've heard is winnable sooner rather than later. Get the poll going.
Oh.
All right, has everyone voted? We could please display the results and drum roll, please. Our top issue is racism. All right. So thank you all again for your participation and your support. If you would like to get involved in a task force or the religious caucus, please type advocacy in the chat and someone will be in touch with you. And now I'll turn it over to our president, Dr. Gail Harrison, for our closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are we able to share the, I think the 3 slides that you have for next steps? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will get to that. There was, I believe, some information that we wanted to share with our groups. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. You know, my group was the justice, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is the one that needs to be number 1. But I have to say that when the other topics came up, and with Roberta sharing the conversation and sharing the passion and sharing really the view of how this pervasive dynamic influences everything, then we have to take a stand on it. We have to see how it's connected to everything. And some people may not see it, but we at RockX, we see it, and we need to see it in even more depth. So I want to thank everyone for voting honestly and voting with your heart. We do have a lot of work to do in terms of what my granddaughter talked about. We've done some organizing. We need to do more of our education so that we can get out there with our agitation. And I've heard in a number of the groups talking about RockX being more visible, being more collaborative. And those are 2 components that we can definitely take into how we go about doing our business. I've noticed that everyone here really has a connection to RockX. And so we're looking forward to you putting forth your best effort. There may be some difficult discussions, probably more than one, but to hang in there and to still face the issue, discuss the issue, strategize the issue of racism in Rochester, in Monroe County. I don't want to just keep going and talk about in New York State, and in the United States, but our focus is going to be Rochester and Monroe County. That's where we can have some input. So those are my closing remarks. Again, I want to thank everyone for their attendance. Reverend Dr. Wilkinson, can you close us out in prayer?
Let me offer this prayer for the journey. Let's be together. O Holy One, we thank you for your presence with us as we conversed, reflected, and envisioned the potential work for justice, compassion, and peace which lay before us. We pray that you will guide our feet, hold our hands, walk with us on this journey of witness and work for justice in your world. So be it. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Be thoughtful. Be thoughtful. Thank you, Asim.
Thank you, Asim.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you, Dr.
Technology.
Gail. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, technology.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
technology. Phew. Yes. Oh my.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night,
everybody.
Good.
Sam, I'm gonna try this again.
All right.
Leave.